Time's up, Admiral.
Here it comes.
Chevron 1, coded.
For my ally is the Force, and the powerful ally again. Life creates it, makes it grow.
You failed your promise. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Cry hammer, and let's set the tongues of war.
Chevron 2 is coded.
Conan, what is best in life? Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of your women.
It's all in the reflexes.
Paul also said you're heavy into martial arts, Tai Chi and all that killer stuff.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
Chevron 3 encoded.
And somebody ought to belt you in the mouth. But I won't. I won't. The hell I will.
Chevron 4 encoded.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Chevron 5 encoded.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Chevron 6 encoded.
Not for while you can, little boy.
Great Scott.
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
You shall not pass! I thought I'd die fighting side by side with an elf.
What about side by side with a friend?
A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day.
Chevron 7 is locked.
Hail and howdy, everybody. Welcome back. And there are giant water stains on my shirt. Look at that. God damn it. I refilled I was going to say, I pulled off not screwing anything up, and I took a drink, and I just filled my jug, and so some splashed on it, and it dripped, and I didn't see it, and there it is, plain as day. Let's just up the camera a little bit here. Don't we love these clean stars? No, it's still not there. Let's fix it a little more. There we go. Here, okay. I slouched down a little bit. There we go. I try so hard.
You're doing great. Doing a great job. I try
so hard. Welcome to Saturday Night Driving, where I seem to be on a record of just botching the intros. It's like the third or fourth one in the row where I just
have you gotten one right?
Sometimes in the distant past. I don't know. You think I felt like I got a haircut. I'm feeling good. I think I'm losing weight again, and I drip water on my shirt. And the thing is, it's the red one, so it's not like it's one of the navy ones or the black ones where you can't see it. I think you see this plain as freaking day, and it's not like I just dribble in my mouth. It just there's a little condensation on the edge of the thing, and when I poured it, and it sloshed, and it just dripped. It's not my fault. Welcome to Saturday.
Careful, you're spiraling.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the show where I am very self-aware of my retardation. Jed, how are you?
I am doing great. Just wanted to say a happy Doctor Who Day to everyone in the chat. Encourage you all to go watch some Doctor Who after the show ends, just to celebrate when that show was good. Remember, I'll probably be watching some Day of the Doctor after I finish the end of Arcane, which came out today. But yeah, Doctor Who always puts me in a good mood. This is a real American holiday to me. I understand how that's funny to say considering it's a British show, but this is a real American holiday to me. I celebrate this way more than anybody can celebrate Black History Month, Trans Awareness Day. Pride has nothing in this house on Doctor Who Day.
If I had known, I would have prepared something, but I don't have time because when we're done here, I got to eat dinner and get ready for some Ballbusters gaming night among us. So I don't have time. I don't have time to get anything and watch anything, and I'd have to choose. I don't know where to go. It's all right.
It's hard to pick sometimes. Yeah. The Day of the Doctor, I think, is just an always go to an anniversary or a crossover multi-Doctor episode.
Yeah. Anyway, we are here to talk a return to a franchise we started. We do that once in a while. We come back to something we start. We promise to. We eventually get around to it. We're going to do another episode or season or movie, whatever you want to call it, of Horatio Hornblower, the Fire Ships, the second in the series. Last time we did the Even Chance. This time it's the Fire Ships. So hail and howdy to the chat across both the channels. We're happy to have everybody here. Hit those like buttons and enjoy the rest of the show live or on the replay. Okay, so Jed, this is your choice. Why don't you walk us back into Hornblower?
Well, so Hornblower is the series about a young man starts out as a midshipman in the British Navy in the late 1700s through the early 1800s as he progresses and gets promoted through the British Navy up into the Napoleonic Wars, which the later movies cover. And this one's the second one. It's also the alternate title. A lot of these early ones had alternate titles. This one was called The Examination for Lieutenant. So he's getting ready to try to be a lieutenant on the Indefatigable. And that's what a lot of his personal drive is throughout the film before obviously the bigger conflicts arise. And I obviously have a huge bias when it comes to these films. I mentioned that previously when we talked about the first one. I grew up loving these movies, but I hadn't seen them in a long time. And I appreciate this one way more than I ever did as a kid. 2 and 3 were my least favorite Hornblower films my entire childhood, but now they're creeping up to be some of my favorites because of the character work in them. Yes, they're slower, they're less action heavy, but I think their character work is way stronger. Their dialogue is near impeccable in this film. I love a lot of the little moments where the director, the writers, they trust the audience. This one feels like the most mature and thoughtful of the early ones, besides maybe the third one, The Duchess and the Devil. But yeah, this one way more appreciative as an adult for the Fire Ships than I ever thought possible.
I agree with you. As far as character growth, it's a very large jump from Horatio in The Even Chance, because it's been a little time. He's still, as you said, acting lieutenant, and the other title makes a lot more sense for this, because while the Fire Ships play a large role in framing the entire, I guess we'll call it. Want to say movie?
Yes, these are movies. They were made as movies originally. That was their original intent. So I like to honor that original intent. So I would say movie.
The presence of the Fire Ship is important because it is the catalyst for the entire second act, where they're in search of food, because the Fire Ships have destroyed a lot of the Spanish in general. The Fire Ship, they've destroyed a lot of the supply ships that are going to keep the British Navy from starving in the Channel while they're floating around fighting the Frenchies. And then at the very end, of course, it's the climactic moment where Horatio basically proves that he's not an idiot to Wedge Antilles.
Was it a surprise for you when you watched it the first time that Wedge was in this movie?
You know what? I don't think I recognize him because he's older.
He's older, and it's a completely different character. Like, I can't imagine Wedge saying this stuff. He's an ass in this movie.
Oh yeah, we'll get to it. That final, the argument he has with that other admiral. When
it's so polite, it's so British,
but we're gonna try and kill each other.
Yeah,
we're gonna kill each other. We're gonna do this. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna send a messenger to you in the morning. He will be most welcome.
Thank you, sir. I'm surprised they didn't use there's a certain phrase in this era where they say "I am your servant," as it's kind of a gentleman's term, and I'm surprised that didn't pop up more in these subsequent conversations. But that's a whole different tangent. But all right, so start us off, Jed. Where do we start in this?
Well, we start out in the Bay of Cadiz on the Indefatigable as they're receiving an envoy from the Spanish government who lets them know that Spain will officially remain neutral in the war between England and France, which began partway through the first film. And the captain of the Indefatigable, Pellew, isn't reacting like Hornblower. Hornblower's like, great, at least we don't have to fight the Spanish. This is going to be great. But Pellew understands that neutrality isn't always as clear-cut as it sounds. It sounds like a fine thing. Great, respectable. But he's seen enough of these conflicts to know that the Spanish are probably going to try to undermine the British in the background, try to help France in this conflict in subtler ways than actually, siding with the French in actual armed combat. But he knows that the way that they're framing it, this is not going to be a good thing for them. And he's ultimately proved correct. And those scenes are so great. The subtlety of Pelew's reactions to Hornblower. He's going through a little bit of a, I don't know what you'd call an
Hero
idealistic
worship. Hero worship.
Well, once Foster shows up from the Dreadnought and he's completely starstruck with him. But even in these early parts, I think they were a little bit subtle with this, so this might be my headcanon. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the way I see him at the beginning of this film is a lot of full of himself. He thinks he's right. He thinks that they're going to be fine. I think that might be a continuation of the first film because he won a very important battle, saved the Indefatigable at the end of that film with some brilliant tactics, took command of a French captured vessel, and that could affect anyone's ego. So I think his ego was a little padded at the beginning of this movie. That's why he was so brash. He was so distant from the thoughtful character that we're used to. And obviously the events of the film reel him back. He sees Foster for what he is and reacts accordingly at the end of the film. But I think it might be a reaction that he got a little full of himself. It's subtle, so it might be my headcanon.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that because Horatio has found early success. He has found early praise. And the problem is, while some of the crew respect him, others don't. With most keenly for the dude that basically turns the thief. What is his name? What's the dude's
Bunting.
name? Bunting, especially his actions, because Hornblower, Horatio tries to, when they're starving, when they're all starving on the ship and everybody is suffering from malnutrition, getting sick and dying, and Horatio's doing his best to keep up morale, but he's also trying to do the duties of acting lieutenant so that he has to keep everybody on control, and he's in charge of disciplinary action if he finds stuff. So he hears that Bunting is busy spreading ill will. Is this, I guess, one way to put it? Ill will.
I mean, that's the best way of putting it, but he's straight up spreading rumors that the captain and the officers are feasting every night, and the crew is put on half rations to facilitate the extravagant food that the leadership
which is bullshit.
eating.
Which is complete bullshit. Because later on, you see Pellew dumps maggots out of a roll.
Those would be weevils, I think.
Weevils.
Because maggots would go after meat.
You're right. Close enough. Weevils. Yeah, I should know that, but I forgot. Hey, I can admit I'm wrong.
To set up the chat who haven't seen this movie so that they know what we're talking about, during this neutrality from Spain, it turns out Spain has actually attacked a British supply ship who happens to have a very famous captain in the Navy called Foster of the Dreadnought. He was just being transported on the supply ship. He takes command, does some stupid maneuver. He tries to attack a Spanish frigate.
Yeah, with a supply ship that has no armaments to speak of.
Not really. Yeah, they might have some full runner guns, but no actual broadside capable cannons.
This is a dude who thought he could go Super Saiyan and just jump over there and kick ass.
Basically. But when that ship sank, the fleet was deprived of a lot of supplies, so people start starving. The Indefatigable doesn't have enough food to feed everyone, and early on, the Spanish fire ships are taking out several of the other supply ships as well. So the British fleet at Gibraltar is struggling. They are starving. And that's what we were referring to with the starvation, the half rations that are affecting the crew. And if we could briefly talk about Finch's arc in this movie or his involvement in the film.
Yeah, go
is that
for
all right?
Yeah, go for it.
So for those of you seen the first movie, Finch is one of the 4 main crew members who works under Hornblower, who actually saved his life in the first film. After Simpson shot Horatio in the head, he fell overboard. And Finch, who doesn't know how to swim really, dove after his commanding officer and grabbed onto a rope and throughout the night held on to Hornblower, kept his head above water and saved his life. Like, that's no small task that Finch accomplished to keep Horatio alive.
That's that camaraderie built, the respect that he had, that Horatio has with his immediate subordinates. And that ties into what I was saying. He has that, I get, connection, that ability where they trust each other. You know, brother and arms up, but other members of the crew don't. So Bunting is able to spread those rumors, while and Horatio hears about it because Bunting is friends with Finch. And he has attached to it. And while Finch is literally dying of malnutrition and fever, Horatio is doing his best to keep him awake, and it's right as they're going to get that, they think there's a fresh ship coming, but then it gets attacked by the Spanish and destroyed. So Finch dies, and that pushes Bunting over the edge. And Horatio tries to stem Bunting's eventual treason by saying, listen, I understand you were close with Finch. I understand you got a problem here. I'm going to overlook this, what you're doing, what you're saying, but you got to shape up, and we're going to get through this. Be a man. But of course, Bunting doesn't. He literally dives into the grain stores and starts eating it and bawling like a baby. I'm starved. I'm hungry. That was really cheesy. That's like
really?
the cheesiest moment for me. That's a cheese moment in the movie, because that dude, he's not selling it enough for me.
Really, I appreciate that moment.
I think it's the partial fetal position that ruins it.
Oh yeah, the position might have been silly, but I like how it facilitates. He's broken. He's a broken man from starvation, from his best friend dying. Mm-hmm.
It's the physical.
It's just the delivery.
The delivery. The delivery.
I can agree with that.
It kind of takes me out of the moment and the desperation of it, because I'm going, I'm hungry, and rolling back and forth with the food on his mouth, and he's swimming in. It's like, it's just no.
It's a bit much.
It's a bit much.
Yeah.
Little over the top. It doesn't ruin it, but it takes me out of it ever so slightly.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
What do you think of Bunting's character? Besides Foster, I'd say he's probably one of the primary antagonists. There's not a whole lot of antagonists in this film, but he creates a lot of the tension in the film. So Bunting is seen as a complicated character. Do you come out on the side of sympathetic for him, or does
I am not sympathetic?
No,
I'm not sympathetic, because these are men. These weren't. Now, maybe correct more. These are not conscripted men. These are men who chose to join, right?
No, they specifically said in this film, I believe it was Matthews, who was explaining to Hornblower why Bunting was so close to Finch, and he said when he was pressed.
Okay, so he was conscripted. Okay, I missed that.
Yep.
I missed.
Yep. So for those of you who don't know, in this era, the British Navy needed crew, they would literally go out, send people in the dark to kidnap people from port cities, and they just wake up aboard ship and it's like, you're in the Navy now. And so obviously Bunting was a little upset about this when this happened, and Finch was the one who was able to help him get settled and helped ease the transition of being kidnapped and put into veritable slavery aboard the ship. But he was not there voluntarily.
I missed that line. That is my fault. So it still doesn't change it, because on simple fact that Horatio shows compassion to him. And from a perspective of your friend died and you're having a hard time, and your commanding officer shows compassion, to me, that would have been enough for me to form a new bond. It's like, okay, this guy's not being a dick. He was trying to help my friend in his dying moments. I'm going to trust him, and I'm going to do my best. Now, it would have been okay if Bunting had still frayed against the lines, tried to buck at it a little bit, but I still don't think his actions are forgivable. What he does, because he willingly. Now, all right, let me ask you this. Do you think he believed they were feasting, or do you think he did that to justify his actions?
I think it was legitimately that he believed it, or at least he was convincing himself of it. It's one of those things where you might be aware that you're lying to yourself, but try to ignore the fact that you're lying to yourself. But the way he frames it with trying to convince the crew, it being a reaction to Finch's death, I have a lot of sympathy for Bunting. Obviously, Hornblower was completely justified with his actions later on in the film, but I don't think Bunting ever disrespected Hornblower. They had that, kind of what you're talking about. Bunting came to respect Hornblower for trying to help Finch through the last days of his malnutrition and scurvy. Would it be scurvy? Oh, when his teeth were falling out?
I didn't see any sores on him, or at least maybe the quality of the one I was watching.
Maybe it's a 90s TV movie. The camera quality isn't great. But whatever, as Finch was dying, Hornblower stayed at his bedside, tried to comfort him, keep him awake, and try to help him as much as he could. So Bunting saw that and came to respect him for that, but he was still going to make the decisions he was going to make. I understand why he's making the decisions he is. From being press king, he doesn't want to be here.
It's understandable. I just think I think Horatio literally threw him a lifeline and he didn't take it.
Yeah, no, it was a poor decision on his part, but I still have sympathy for him because starvation can do horrible things to a man, and then you're, whipped by the entire crew. So for those of you who don't know, after he stole the grain, stuck into the grain stores, and had the "I'm hungry" crying fetal position scene that Adam was talking about, the captain sentences him to the gauntlet, where he's, his shirt is taken off, two guys with swords take him through rows of the crew, and they all take turns whipping him.
Rope with like tight knotted rope.
Knotted rope. It's not pretty. And Hornblower actually volunteers, partially to punish himself and partially to see the effects of going easy on the crew. So he volunteers to lead Bunting through this gauntlet. So he has to make eye contact with this man as he's whipped mercilessly by the entire crew. And I think the performances from everyone in that scene is just astounding. I love Ioan Gruffudd's facial expressions going through the gauntlet. Bunting sells it, even though the effects of the blood aren't phenomenal. His performance further sells it. But I don't know. Bunting, I feel bad for him. I agree that he needed to die at the end of the film. That's where things needed to go.
He wanted to die.
He absolutely wanted.
He was gonna. First he was a thief, then he went AWOL, and then he, when captured AWOL, continued to disobey and cause problems. He was facing the noose when he came back. He was going to be hung. There's no question. So, and one could say, and later on when during the part we're going to go over next, he makes a break for it, and Horatio tracks him down, and there's a struggle, and he forces Horatio to shoot him in the chest, and that's a mercy in a way. It was a mercy,
and that's what Matthews tells him. Horatio needed to hear that, is that you can't save a man who doesn't want to be saved. But Hornblower saw it as more than just one man he was trying to help, as he talked about Lieutenant Bracegirdle early on in the film when Hornblower was studying for his exam to be a lieutenant. Bracegirdle told him, you can memorize books, facts, and figures, but that's never going to prepare you to be a leader. Once you see your men starving, you'll learn what type of officer you are. So test yourself on the men, not on the books. And so he takes Bunting really to be his test, and he sees that he fails it. And that's why later on in the film, he doesn't feel like he's ready to be lieutenant. And that's ultimately what doesn't happen, because he needs to learn that, he had great success in the first film, like you talked about, early success, but that doesn't mean he's ready. I think this film facilitates well that he is not ready to be a lieutenant, and it was good in the end that he wasn't.
Yeah, because now we take to the middle part where they're going to go strike a deal with some Muslims. They're Muslims, right?
They're a little unclear where this is taking place. I think it's supposed to be the Middle East, because I think I heard someone say Iran at one point. I don't know if it was a country yet at this point.
It
does take them 3 weeks. 3 weeks to sail back to Gibraltar, though.
Yeah. So
on that smaller ship. So
listen, so they went somewhere where the Muslims had control at that point. It could have been somewhere in North Africa too. Because
could have been North Africa. Could have been the Middle East.
That's an easy jaunt across the Mediterranean. That's within the realm of their jurisdiction. So that's not it's somewhere around there. We got to assume, because they weren't clear, and the guys who they used to do that, they weren't very obvious where they came from.
It was ambiguous whether or not they were African or Middle Eastern or whatnot.
Yeah,
especially the prince or whatever they were talking to, that looked like a white dude.
Yeah. So they get an ambassador to go with them. I forget that actor's name, but he is a character actor for a lot of stuff. People might know he played Baron Harkonnen in the Dune series for the 2000s.
Did he?
Yeah, he's his Baron Harkonnen is fantastic in the Dune miniseries.
I actually know him from Doctor Who. He plays Churchill in the Matt Smith era.
Yes, that too. Yeah. So he's a great character actor all over the place. So very recognizable, and he's the ambassador. The ambassador's role in all of this is very interesting, because
he's one of my favorite characters.
It's your classic foes to friends situation, where a man of a certain station is used to being treated in a certain way, but because one, it's a small ship that they're on. It's not a large ship. And two, then the inciting incident of when they, to get to the point here, when they go to pick up the supplies, the gold for supplies, there's plague. There's plague. And he does the respectable thing. He's the right thing of, we cannot go back. And that's a man that shows you that despite his haughty behavior leading up where I need my own room, I can't be the man, this and that. It shows that in the end, though, he is a man of great integrity when he says, oh, yeah, we're dead. Because if we go back, we might bring the plague to the fleet. And I've seen what that does to people. We can't do this. And he has to actually convince Horatio on how to handle this shit. But then they need to come to terms because the fleet needs the food. So they get on there and then they have to convince Pellew, okay, yeah, hi, we got plague. So don't burn us.
We got plague.
But I got an idea. Why don't we just sail back? It's going to take us the quarantine period of time to get back anyway. And thus ensues the mini adventure within all this. And like you said, this is Horatio's test, the dealing with the men, the dealing with adversity. He is the only one that can make these executive decisions because while the ambassador is an important man, he's a civilian. He can't order him around. He's not as though he's a member of parliament who would be there, who could maybe, I don't know how the rules of
he can't take command. He can't. He can advise Horatio, absolutely, but it all falls on Horatio. And I can't imagine the amount of strain the crew is on, and even more so Horatio is on, because they've got the Black Death aboard probably. They all think they're going to die, but they're also holding the supplies that could save the lives of everyone they know back in the fleet. That's a lot of pressure to keep working, to drive past fatigue. As you see in the film, Horatio has to tell them to stop. And they're more than willing to, of course, but I saw it as them trying to distract themselves from the horrible situation that they're in, why they were working so hard, and just motivated to help the fleet. Like they really do care about their own.
You know what also helped? Having steak.
In the end, that did help.
Having steak helps. Like, oh, we're gonna eat steak. Yeah. That's an important scene. I mentioned that because we come back to that because there's an interaction between Horatio and Pellew about why he made that decision, which is a very important moment. So there's a little venture and there's moments of fear. What are we going to do, this and that? And back to the ambassador, it's an important thing because he's resistant to a lot of stuff. But at one moment, Horatio says, listen, your skill set is no longer applicable. You did what you had to do, but now if you're going to help us, you need to do something else. So guess what, fatty? You're going to cook. You're going to make food. And
it was ultimately the right choice because as soon as the cook talked to him and he realized the cook gets to choose the best food for himself,
he
was a little bit on board. He's like, all right, this is the perfect job for me on this ship.
But then he actually learned something, and that's what we talk about. There's good character work. There's good, even though he's a bit character, we're never going to see him again in any of this stuff. I don't think he comes back ever in the other movies. No, we're never going to see him again. He's not like one of Horatio's band that circles back into his life occasionally here and there. But it's an important thing of your station doesn't matter when you're in the shit and you're providing a real skill. And he says his final line is, there's something to be gained from watching your efforts benefit other men and benefit your fellow man and realize that you helped in an important way. And I learned something, and they're friends at the end of this. It's like, hey, you know what? We fought a little bit. As the ambassador says, I was a little over the top. I was constantly afraid. And Horatia's like, I was a little headstrong. You know what? We were able to work this out. We got through this. And they get through it. They think one point, like a drunk dude might have the plague. Everybody's pushing him with the oars. It's like, what's that gonna do? I don't know.
Oh, they were gonna push him overboard. They were trying to get him to the side to knock him overboard.
Yeah, but all right. So during the adventure, one of the trials they have to overcome is I think they needed Why I forget, why did they have to go ashore again? I forget that.
Because they were running out of water. The cows take a ridiculous amount of water. So
Yeah,
their
and
water
they're
supplies
shitting everywhere.
weren't
So
good.
you got clean that crap up. So they go ashore, and that's when Bunting gets killed. Because they run into some locals there. There's a whole big of trouble. Some of the Marines die. And when they're coming back, they've discovered that Foster is back on his dreadnought. He has commandeered some of their beef. And they're still a week out of Gibraltar, which means they still have a week left of quarantine. And this is where Foster's shine begins to tarnish a little bit for Horatio. Because wait a minute. This man who I thought was this brave hero, he's this daring doodad, he does all this great stuff. I have worked so hard to make sure that, per the ambassador's description, we do not endanger the fleet. And here he is. He's just gonna. They came on board. They had to go on board to get that beef, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Those
absolutely.
2 sides of beef. They exposed themselves, and they're not even entirely sure that the cattle isn't sick either, because plague knows no boundaries. Everything gets plague, especially if you have animals that have fleas, because that's how the plague spreads initially through pests. So he literally is possibly taking the plague onto his dreadnought, a very large, very, very manned ship. And Horatio comes and says, "Sir, excuse me, sir, you cannot do this. You're risking plague." "It's all right, don't worry. You're almost better, and we're hungry. I want steak too."
Yeah.
And that's a big deal, because suddenly, not only does Horatio stand up to him, which doesn't bode well for in Act 3, but it's another reality check for Horatio, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is. He comes to realize, that his hero is not the man he thought he was. Never meet your heroes is very relevant to this story. But if what's his bucket? Foster was willing to endanger the lives of all his men and the rest of the fleet by doing this, then he doesn't really care. He's not a man that should be looked up to. And it screws Horatio over later, but he realizes that doing the right thing doesn't come with rank all the time. He has to resist his leadership when he feels strongly about something. So it's a hard balance, following orders and denying them. But this is an important journey for him to realize that his supervisors aren't always right.
And hero worship, especially in a time of war, it's not a good thing. Even though Foster does prove in the end to still be the right man for that type of job.
He's still a brave man. He's just he takes undue risks. He's very reckless.
Yeah.
Fame and glory is all he cares about.
Biggles, this is the second of the Horatio Hornblower movies from the 90s. That's what this is. Okay, so they eventually get back to the Indefatigable. And all right, so walk us through when they get back there. And Pelliu's like, "So you gave away meat." But why is this important? Why is this important, Jed?
Well, I think it's partially Pelliu obviously has to reprimand him for killing a cow and wasting food to that level, that it was very extravagant. But Pelliu understood why it was necessary for morale, so it was more a slap on the wrist, but he had to at least say the words, if nothing else. And it covered up his own vulnerability, because he has come to care for Hornblower greatly. It's his prized pupil. You saw at the beginning when Horatio sided with Foster about the way Foster dealt with the supply ship at the beginning of the film, and that hurt Pelliu, because he was hoping that his star pupil would side with him, but he was obviously going to let Horatio find his own way in the world. And he cares for Horatio. So reprimanding him helped him not have to show that emotion, which would have been unprofessional of him.
Yeah.
But it's a great character moment, because what's being said is virtually irrelevant. It's all in the performances of these two actors, of where they're really saying, "Hey, it's great to see you again, sir. I'm happy to be back. I survived." And Pelliu just like, "Yeah, I'm really glad you're back. We need men like you in the fleet." And that's what was really being communicated, I believe, in the scene. Not, "Hey, you killed a cow. Shouldn't have done that. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. All right, back to work."
Well, and it's what's important about this, what my takeaway is that this is the growing foundation of their relationship, which is massively important in the trial 2 movies later, when Horatio is on trial, and how he's trying to do everything to get Horatio out of it within his power. So that, though, I think that's actually my favorite out of all of these, because
Mutiny or
Mutiny,
Retribution,
the both of them together, because it's a 2-part story.
Yeah,
it's the beginning, because first of all, not to get ahead to that, the performances in that one are outstanding.
Oh, you start to get Paul McGann in the movie, you've already elevated your cast.
Yeah, and you get back and you get everybody in there. So everything in that particular story that's a compelling one. That's a really compelling story, because there's still that what if moment, what really happened, over all that kind of stuff. So, but that's getting ahead. We'll get to there one day. And yes, Biggles, we did cover it. If you go to the playlist on my channel, you can find it back there. It's called Horatio Hornblower, The Even Chance. I think it was last year when we did it.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago, but yeah.
So they're back on the ship, and now Horatio, this whole time, he's been, like you said, he's been studying to take his lieutenant's exam. And he's nervous, of course, because he's now doubting himself. The whole bunting thing has him doubting himself. Am I capable of making these decisions? Have I done it right? And he's in his own head. He's really in his own head. And it gets worse when they get back to port, and he discovers that Foster is part of the panel. And Foster doesn't like him at this point, because he didn't like that Horatio stood up to him during that period. And nobody's happy. None of the acting or
they're
officers,
not all acting lieutenants.
Officers.
They're midshipmen and acting lieutenants, but yeah,
Officers.
all the potential promotees.
Yeah. They're all, they think this, it's like a hangman's panel. There's no getting out of it. And one by one, everybody's failing. I don't think anybody passed, did they?
Not that we saw, at least. Yeah, everyone failed that we saw. And it doesn't surprise me with a panel like Hammond and Foster. I don't know anything about the third dude, but Hammond, we get developed in the later movies a lot more, especially the 7th one. That's his big film to shine. But yeah, no one was ever going to pass that.
Yeah. So Horatio's like the last one, I believe, right? He is the last
Second
one.
to last.
Okay, goes in there, and he is watching everybody fail. He's in his own head. He's afraid of Foster because he knows he can't stand up to like this. He's flustered. He completely chokes. It's a simple.
He can't
thing.
even say his own name and rank.
Yeah, and he's not gonna get washed out, but he's gonna get rejected. He's gonna have to wait again. But then there's a warning bell, and the port's under attack by the Spanish, and it's a fire ship. This is where the fire ship comes back into play. And it's now, we go back to the line earlier, your actions speak more than your written shit you learn to write down, all that kind of stuff. And Foster takes command because he is a man of action. And in this kind of situation where you have some of the proper tools at hand, you do want the man of action to wield his proper weapons. And Foster and Horatio go out on a dinghy, pretty much. They go out on a dinghy, and they get on the fire ship. Okay, now, Foster may be a dick, but the man has balls of steel to get on there, and because they realize there's nothing they can do to stop the fire ship. If the fire ship hits, it's going to be disastrous for everything. It literally will set the port on fire, and that will hurt the war effort. So Foster,
it's a very tight port. Like fire's going to spread from one ship to another. They are closely compacted.
And into the city, most likely too. And the Indefatigable is in the range. The Indefatigable cannot get out of the way. She's going to get hit. And Foster and Horatio get on there, and they literally steer the ship, 2-man it. And at one point, the Indefatigable crew sees Horatio, and there's like, oh shit, that's Hornblower. He's doing it again. All right. And it's a great shot as the fire ship goes by, flames everywhere, and Foster and Horatio are just going, yep, we got this shit.
And they're just acting so casual, and Palu's looking at them in stunned silence.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I think I'm going to start to get Hornblower. I have to get used to this. This is what he does. And they save the day. But the thing is, Horatio catches on fire. They got to jump in the water, and Foster actually saves Horatio there because Horatio is on fire and he has to hold him. And then here comes the other captain or the admiral, Hammond, and that's where we get to the moment. And Foster is now in love with Horatio. He thinks he's the he is the bestest, bravest man in the world because you earn Foster's respect when you also are a man of action. So. If they had gone back to panel, he would have just kind of pushed him through, no problem, I think. But Hammond gets on there, and Foster starts picking up Hammond. Where were you? Where were you?
Pick us up fast enough. We were in the water for 30 whole seconds.
Yeah, what are you doing? And Hammond, they start fighting, and there's that funny thing. I'm going to duel you, sir. I thank you, sir. We will duel in the morning. Yes, I will send a man. Yes, I love you very much. Thank you, sir.
It was the most polite argument ever. It's the most British thing ever. But
two men who are basically going to try and kill each other in the morning, and it's just, thank you, sir. Good day, sir. And Horatio's just like,
okay. He's so confused coming off this high of, saving the day, not dying, and then this happens. But they don't actually reveal in this film who dies or what happens with that duel. They eventually do. Do you remember how it turns out?
Well, if Hammond's alive, that means he didn't die. I don't remember, though. That's way later.
But Foster does die in the duel.
Okay.
It's not a draw. He does die the next morning.
I didn't remember at all.
They don't reveal it for movies later, but he did not make it through that.
Yeah. Well, shucks.
With what you know what Hammond does in the 7th film, especially, do you think it would have been better for Foster to survive and keep having those reckless tactics in the fleet?
Well, honestly, then yes, because Hammond was a douche. He was a traitor, not this violent. It would have been better if Foster had survived because Foster was the king's man. He was king's man. He was loyal to the Navy, and he believed in fighting Boney and the Spaniards and all that stuff. He was for king and country, no question. Was he crazy, reckless? Yes, but his honor and heart was in the right place.
He's a fascinating character.
Yeah,
you don't have to agree with his actions, but his motives are beyond repute.
Yeah. And then, the adventure continues. Hornblower is back on board. Pellegrino says, yeah, guess what? It's fine. That panel's never reconvened. You'll just wait. And you know what? You learned your lessons, didn't you, kid? Yes, I did. I learned my stuff. And then we're off. And next time, he's going to meet a woman that should have lived.
No. That's the 4th film. We still
have
to
sorry. The con woman is the next one. The con woman.
Yeah, the con woman's the next one. The 4th one I love with the woman who should have lived. That should have been what was named. But I love how the film ends because the whole idea of the film is Horatio ready to be a lieutenant? And I think he rightly comes to the decision that he's not. So I'm really glad that, like you said, if they had gone back to the examination room, Foster would have pencil whipped his promotion. I think it's a good thing that Horatio wasn't promoted at this point because he still had a lot of learning to do, as Brace Girdle points out.
The next 2 movies, especially with what happens in the next one when he goes to when they're in prison for a while and he finds his friend again, and then in the next one where they're actually on in the battlefield with the woman who should have lived. All those are massive growth levels. So when you get to the 5th movie and he gets a command, that's his 5th movie, right? When he gets command,
he gets it at the end of the 6th. He gets to be a lieutenant at the end of the 4th.
Yeah, but so when he's actually at that point, though, he has had the practical experience at this point. He is not afraid of himself. I think that's part of what this movie is. Horatio's afraid of himself because he doesn't trust his own decisions. And you have to get love or hate Foster. Foster believed adamantly that every decision he made was right. And that's when you are in command. That is a lesson being in command. You have to believe that your decision is correct, whether it ends up being wrong or not. In the moment, you have to believe it's correct because you cannot be distracted from purpose.
Confidence is better than indecision in a life and death situation.
Yeah. And Horatio demonstrated throughout this entire movie that he was indecisive constantly, and he wasn't convinced he was making the right decision, and he always waffled, and he showed his stress, saying, "Oh, what now? Why are you bothering me now? Why are we doing this now? When you're in command, you can't do that. You cannot do that, because the men have to see you as the rock. You have to be the strong one. They have to think you always know what's going to happen. You're ready, and your orders will be carried out because they're the right thing to do." And he had to learn that lesson. And it takes 2 more movies to learn those lessons. And he has to lose people, get people back, and lose people. And so it's fascinating. It really is. And that's why as period pieces go and character work go, these are a great set of films. Because the more you get to know Horatio, the more you're engaged with his story and his adventures. And he is a character you want to see him succeed. And you want him to be with the right people. I mean, to cheat a little bit further, it's like, yes, don't marry that stupid bitch at the end. Don't.
She's awful.
She's awful. She's guilting you into this. You don't love her. Why are you doing this? So there's all kinds of great things that surrounding his character, and it's a fun ride. And now as we go further, I of course do have my feelings on how certain other characters behave throughout it, but that's saved for other movies. Like certain characters that get done well, suddenly it's as though their character development evaporates.
I'm gonna have to ask you after the show who you're talking about, because I'm not sure.
I think I forget who he is, but I know the actor because I recognize him. I just forget which character it is, but I'll mention it. I'll tell you when we're done. Anyway, but that's it. I mean, great acting. Period piece accuracy is just about spot on. There's no breaking of the suspension of disbelief that you're watching these guys at this time, and the practical effects are great. Everybody's on a ship. It's real ships, real water. None of this CGI crap.
There's some model work that you can tell a few times, like the fire ship and the prow shots. That's a model. So there's a few model issues, but it's still for a TV budget, TV movie budget in the 90s. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, this is A&E in the 90s. They weren't rolling in it. They were a minor cable channel. That's where you went to watch random shit at the time. So anyway, all right, there we go. What?
Oh, I was just gonna say, attacking onto what you said, this is really a character study. All of these are about Horatio Hornblower as he becomes a famous admiral. That's how it goes in the books. It's his life story to becoming basically the equivalent of Admiral Nelson. He's for those of you who aware who he is, but he's not a Gary Sue. Yes, he is very well educated in the first film. He has a great head on his shoulders, but he still fails constantly. He doesn't just get given command or a lieutenant position in this film. And he works so hard for the development he goes through, and he doesn't deserve things off the bat. He does not deserve to be a lieutenant, in my opinion, in this film. And correction, he becomes a lieutenant at the end of the third film. He gets news that while he was in prison, the commission went through, or the promotion went through.
I forgot to mention a great carryover from the first movie. He speaks fluent French at the beginning of this movie.
He does.
He speaks fluent French. He learned. So now he can do that. So it's how it allows him to communicate. They didn't know Spanish, but they knew French. So it worked. Anyway. All right, Jed, it's your week. You get to go first on the score.
Well, I definitely think this is an improvement over the first film, and it's just a great collection of films. The character work, like I said, is much stronger. The arc with Bunting, I think, is fascinating. It is a sad tragedy. It's a tragedy because I feel for Bunting a lot. I understand why he makes his decisions. Again, he's not forgivable, just like he said, but it's a fall from grace that pulls at my heartstrings, at least. And that's the way it is with a lot of these characters and the arcs they go on. So I would give this film a 7.5 out of 10. Really solid in all the different aspects, especially with the budget of a 90s TV film. They did extraordinary things with top-notch writing, great acting, and there's very few things that I would call flaws in this film. There are some coincidences, like Foster showing up everywhere, the fact that all these things always happen to Horatio. There's a lot of coincidences. I'm going to be fair with that, but it's expected.
I'm right there with you. I give it a 7.5 as well. And I cannot help but compare it to future ones going with that. I cannot completely take that out of the equation, knowing where the story goes, knowing that there are much more interesting and fascinating adventures that are going to happen. And I love a good period piece. We've been over this before. I love this is especially a very interesting era in European history where so many things are happening, the rise of Napoleon and all that kind of stuff. One day we may even do the next stage in that. We could do the War and Peace miniseries in parts, because I haven't seen it complete. I've seen parts of it. My mother swears by it. She says it's the best representation of the book ever made, better than what everything ever done, and it's got a really fantastic cast too, from what I've seen. And you want to talk about spot on production value? So one day maybe that's way down the road, because that's like a 3-part miniseries, a lot of hours, so it would have to be broken up. But I love this era. It's interesting stuff, fantastic performances, and the cast only gets better and better going forward with what you have with these movies. So a lot to look forward to. So we will come back to it. So that's it. We're done. We are taking a break next week. It's Thanksgiving weekend, holiday weekend. So we're going to take a break. When we come back in December, it's start of Christmas season. I'll have the Santa hat on and everything. And technically, the next movie, to me, is a Christmas movie. It takes place over Christmas. It is through the efforts of a previous fan engagement from the chat. We are going to be doing The Lion in Winter, starring Sir Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn, and a very, very young Sir Anthony Hopkins. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. I love every single thing about this movie. And I hope you love this. I think this is cinema. What we're watching when we come back in December, this is cinema, Jet. This is cinema.
I'm excited.
I think you are going to love this. And I look forward to it. And then we start the Christmas season. Some Christmas movies.
If Die Hard counts, I think The Lion in Winter can count.
And Die Hard does count.
It does.
We won that argument. Sorry, Mustang. Anyway, so there you go, guys. Thank you all for being here. And if you are watching live, when we're done here, you're going to be carried over to the Among Us stream in about an hour or so. Me and the Ballbusters gang and a few others, we're going to be acting sus and yelling at each other for a few hours. So join us for that, my perspective at least. So thank you all for being here. Hit those like buttons, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, have a happy Thanksgiving. Till we don't see you, and take it easy, guys.